Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Hiring and Inspiring. Today's guest is Michael Shevers. Michael is a recent connection of mine, a guy who I've connected with on LinkedIn over the last few months. He is an established business professional, sales professional, been in the world of tech for a number of years, a sales leader. And he's also recently made a move, a career change in the last sort of few months, and joined a new business. So I'm looking forward to catching up with him, kicking at all things sales, find out how he's getting on his new role, and for him to no doubt, and I'm hopefully confident he can share some wisdom with me today. So, Michael, with that introduction, welcome to the show, mate. How are you getting on?
Thank you very much, Joe. A pleasure to be here. I'm going very well. In fact, we've been connected for a couple of years, not a couple of months.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's how long I've been following. I've been following you. I've been following your career as well. So I'm a fan.
Nice. Always good to be a fan. Well, yeah, thank you for joining, mate. It's
pleasure.
Your background, it was caught my eye when you messaged me the other day. So I'm looking forward to hopefully learning from you. As I said, as I mentioned in the intro just there, you've fairly recently joined a new business. Readinow, is that have I said that right?
Yeah, Readinow.
That's the new company. Broadly speaking, how's it going in the new role so far? How you finding it?
It is early days. It's been a couple of months. We are what I would call a post startup. So if anybody knows, I guess the phases of a startup is we've proven that our product works. We now have a portfolio of customers who love using it, and we're kind of ready now to scale to the next level. But before we scale, we need to create the systems, processes, teams in place to really be able to hit the market a lot harder than we've been. So we're kind of going from one salesperson who was the founder this year to a team of 5, 6, maybe up to 10 within the next 12 months. That's a really big transition.
And what's your remit? What's your role in the business?
Great question. So I've been hired as, I guess, a sales director, but because my background is also in sales enablement, part of my job is going to be to create those systems and those processes to make sure that our sales team is really successful when they go to market and talk to customers. So that's what I'm working on currently.
And back to the business, what do you sort of offer? What's your solution? What type of customers are you helping?
Yeah, well, we've got a what's called a no-code platform. So, and we sell that to the enterprise market, essentially for them to be able to digitize any business process they can possibly think of. And because it's a no-code platform, what that means is they can make the changes to the software themselves without needing a software engineer or paying for expensive resources to do it for them. It's something that more and more businesses are finding they want to have control over, rather than if they need new functionality, they put in a request to their vendor and they wait a few months before the vendor says, "Hey, we'll now do it," because more customers have asked for it. So it's really an exciting part of what I do, and that is really getting out there and talking to enterprise customers about their business digitization and transformation needs.
And how's the market sort of reacted to it? What sort of appetite is there for it?
I think the market is still very cost conscious, but what we're kind of finding our niche right now, and that is within the risk, compliance, and governance space. And right now, the federal government, through APRA, is mandating that financial services organizations get a certain level of compliance by 2026. So all of a sudden, when the government tells you got to do something, everyone's panicking. How do I do it? What does it mean? So we're getting a lot of traction around, companies asking us, well, what does that mean for me? What do I have to do? And maybe you can talk to us about some software systems that can help us get to where we need to go by 2025, 26. So we're getting some traction.
Nice. And back to your role then, early days. But how much have you been sort of hands-on selling, speaking to the customers, compared to getting sort of what's the word, sort of in there with your team and doing some coaching and
Yeah,
leadership
yeah.
and management stuff?
Look, that's a great question, and I've worked in companies where the manager or the sales director is behind a desk and they've got Salesforce in front of them and all the data, and they're managing people through activity targets.
Yeah.
With a small company, and when I say small company, obviously it's we've got 50, 60 people, so we are relatively small. I don't think there's any room for somebody sitting in the back office or sitting behind a desk. I think a sales leader really needs to be in the trenches with their team, in front of customers, helping see things from a perspective that they may not see, and coaching outside of that, but definitely being in there with the customer as well, and being able to help close deals. I've seen some really, really successful sales leaders in companies I've worked who are very much involved in helping their team close deals, not micromanaging, but helping to maybe solve problems, remove bottlenecks or roadblocks, and suggesting ways where the process can be sped up a little bit.
And how would you describe your leadership style? Would you say
it's exactly that, Joe? I'm a very, very supportive manager. Rather than telling you what to do, I will say, this is where we need to get to. We need to do that together as a team. This is your role within that team to get us there. These are the steps that you need to take to get to the target that you're given. Now let's work together to make sure that every step you move up as quickly as possible. That's the kind of the kind of values that I've brought into the business world. I was in the Army Reserve when I was very young, and as an officer there, I was trained that your job as a leader is to support your people, not the other way around. And I kind of taken that to my business philosophy.
So supportive being the word there, I think you mentioned twice.
Very much.
If there was one word to sum up your leadership style, it's
supportive.
Not sort of it's not sort of one, if someone has a problem, get on with it kind of thing. You're like, right, how can we work on this together?
That's right. That's it. That's exactly right. Let's work on it together and let's solve it together.
Gotcha. And the team, in the current business, how have you found sort of integrating with them and them sort of picking up your style?
So far, so good. I'm very happy to say the team is a very diverse one in terms of both experience, subject matter expertise, and motivation and outlook and style. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and I think a supportive approach to that kind of diversity of talent means that they all react very, very positively to that. So I'd like to think it's so far so good. We're moving forward.
Yeah. Do you see that as part of your remit to sort of understand the team and find out how to what makes each and every different person tick? So your style it's not one size fits all. This is my approach. This is how if you like it, great, stick around. If you don't, there's the door. It's like I've got to really understand each individual salesperson, understand their motivation, and maybe tailor your style a little bit to each person. If you do you understand my question there?
Absolutely. It has got to be a tailored approach because everybody has a very, very diverse set of talents they bring to the table, particularly in a post-startup environment when our systems and processes are fairly young and we don't yet have the predictability to say, if you do things our way, you will reach your goal and you will make your money and your commission. We're not able to yet say that. There are larger companies, global organizations who have been doing this for 20 years, and they're able to say, listen, come and work for us. If you do it our way, you will make money. We're not in that position to do that. So we really do need to take a very, very tailored approach and show how to get to where we want to go for you, but you being the individual that you are, not pretending to be somebody that you're not. I just don't think it works when we're trying to make somebody something that they're just not comfortable being.
Yeah, gotcha.
Mm.
On the topic of leadership, I pulled up I think a post of yours and a quote you mentioned
Okay.
fairly recently, and it was sort of, I'm just going to read out here. It
Okay.
was, in sales, if you do what you've always done, you're likely to get a lot less. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. Very good quote. What I meant by that is that, look, what I've noticed with salespeople, and I've been in the sales profession for a long time. I was a recruiter for a long time, hiring salespeople. And one thing that I found talking to salespeople is that if something works for them, they're closing deals and they're making money, they will stick to that and be very, very resistant to doing things differently unless they feel some pain
Yeah.
around that. Okay. Um, However, if customers' buying behavior has changed, I'm not talking just about their buying process, but the way they engage with you, that changes on a regular basis. So if you're not changing the way you sell, but your customers are changing the way they buy, there's a real misalignment in the way
Mm,
you're going to be making money and how successful you're going to
yeah.
be. So it's really, really important that if you're still doing things the same way you were doing it 5 years ago, I suspect you'll still do well, but you're going to have to work harder to make the same amount of sales that you were making at that time because buyers have changed
Mm,
the way that they buy. So you really need to be always looking at what do I change that's going to align better with my customers. And I think that's a really, really
yeah.
important part that every sales manager really has to be responsible for, helping the team align better with their customers.
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
that word adaptability, isn't it? It is a bit of a
Yeah,
buzzword.
you've got to
But
be.
for a good reason, I think. Like, it's because I always think the best salespeople that I see, um, it is their ability to adapt and try new
Yep.
things and take a few risks and be open to change and being open to being wrong about what they've maybe, the tried and tested, rather than, and I get it all the time from my customers who are
You
looking to
do.
recruit salespeople. We don't want someone that's stuck in their ways. I hear it all the time.
Okay,
um,
that's
yeah,
very valid.
how important is it to you, maybe when you're hiring, that adaptability? I guess sounds like it's pretty
Very
high
much
based on
so.
that quote.
Very much so. I would add to that, Joe, that don't wait until you're feeling pain by, you're not reaching your quota, your manager is on your case, or you're on a performance improvement
Mm,
plan. Don't wait to change your selling style. Always, spend time
yeah,
finding out what's going on in the market. What is the buyer behavior doing in terms of how they're approaching vendors, how they're making a decision around what to buy. Be always on top of that all the time. So be
yeah.
adaptable in that way.
How much of that, responsibility wise, is on the salesperson compared to the manager,
I,
do you
I
think?
think, yeah, I think 100%. They're out there talking to customers a lot more than the sales
Yeah.
manager. They're the ones who are getting more objections, questions, pushbacks, no decisions. So they've got to be
Yeah.
on top of it all the time. Very much like,
Mm,
a recruiter that specializes in a particular industry sector. They know what's going on. A salesperson's got to go really understand what's going on
yeah.
in the sales profession as well.
It's your, to use a bit of an old fashioned term, it's your craft, right?
Craft.
You got to,
Yeah,
it's your profession. You want to try and,
that's a, that.
always be trying sharpening that,
I
whatever you want
really
to call
like
it.
that word. I really like the word craft. Unfortunately,
Mm,
I meet a lot of salespeople who don't feel it's that. It's just a job. They don't feel it's a craft. If they're doing it and they're making money, they're being employed. Why change anything? Why bother? But when you think it's a craft,
mm.
then you're always perfecting that. That's a great word, Joe.
You mentioned a few times about the changing buying behaviors.
Hmm.
There's something to stay on top of. As someone who's in the trenches yourself and speaking to customers, how have, I appreciate maybe a bit of a broad question, but how
Yeah.
has sort of buying behavior changed from the
Yeah.
customers that you've dealt with, maybe over the last
Ye-
couple of years?
Over the couple of years, overwhelmingly, it's taking longer to get a buying decision. It's not just taking longer to get the buying decision, but there are more people involved in that buying decision than ever. There's lots of statistics flying around, but it really just depends what industry you're in and what it is that's being purchased. But overwhelmingly, it is taking longer because more people are involved in the buying decision, and they're involved in the buying decision because nobody wants to make the wrong buying decision, particularly when it comes to software. If you make the wrong buying decision with software and you're stuck with it for the term of the contract, it is hell for a company, and it's certainly hell for somebody who made the buying decision. So everybody's very, very, very careful about what they're purchasing these days. You might confuse that with the fact that people don't want to spend money. People want to be careful with money. People are still happy to spend money if it's the right expenditure and the right decision. And what's really causing the delays is people, you need to jump through a lot more hoops in order for them to be comfortable about buying things from you. That's the difference that I've noticed in the last couple of years.
And well, you giving away all your secrets here. How would you recommend a salesperson adapt to that and combat that? Combat that change.
Yeah, overwhelmingly, I found that salespeople don't understand that you need to get a lot of stakeholders involved very, very early on in the buying process. Usually you're kind of trained to go after the decision maker, that mythical decision maker, the most important person, the most, and that's just not the case anymore. There is fewer and fewer dictatorial type decision makers who you've got to go after. It's more often than not, it's a committee. The decision maker will ask their views and their opinions, and a lot of salespeople find that out towards the end of the process when they think it should be closing. And if you find that out right up front, then you're likely to manage the process better. You kind of got to be like a project manager, if you like, across a number of personalities, a number of decision makers, and corral them all to the right decision. So that's what kind of I teach in a lot of the sales training sessions that I create and conduct.
So avoid that tunnel vision to that one person.
Totally. I just don't think that exists anymore. Certainly not at the what I would say the mid market or the enterprise end of the market. It just doesn't exist.
Understood. Right, let's talk SDRs. Because you posted something the other day which did catch my eye. It was a post around SDRs. I think the sort of the graphic was that sort of classic iceberg where there was the sort of above water, which was sort of what SDRs look like they're doing, should be doing, sort of thing, which was I think cold calling, emailing, that kind of stuff, and then beneath the surface, beneath the water, was the huge chunk of the iceberg which had everything else around it. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was sort of the resilience, the hard worker, the attitude, honing your craft, building a brand on LinkedIn, all those kind of the extra stuff that you don't necessarily traditionally put on the job description or for an SDR. If we're talking SDRs, entry level salespeople, where have you sort of seen, or what character traits can maybe be typically a successful SDR bring to the table outside of the traditional above? They can make good cold calls.
Yeah. I think it's important to, and this is something I also posted sometime on LinkedIn, is companies have got to stop thinking of SDRs as phone monkeys. The only thing they do is they're on the phone making phone calls. That iceberg post that you mentioned suggests that that's just a part of their job. There's so many other skills and things that they're doing that a manager or business owner just does not see. It's such an important role. I don't think it's treated with the respect it deserves, particularly in the current market when it's so much more difficult to get a customer to even agree to a first meeting with a vendor. I think what I posted was that opening a new opportunity is is the new closing. It's just as important to start
Yes,
something
that was it. Yes.
as it is to close it. So this is such an important role, and I'd like for the SDRs out there, if they're listening, to know that I appreciate them, and I know a lot of companies I work for also appreciate what they do. To your question about what's really required as a skill set, look, when you're at entry level, um, I think there's a whole list of things that you can bring to the table. That is someone trying to enter the industry through the SDR role just doesn't understand. I think the sort of three things that you can bring, that anybody can bring, and I think if you can talk, right, you can convince somebody to buy, right? It's not that difficult. So I think the communication skills are really, really important. Um,
Mm.
and that's why a lot of companies are recruiting for evidence that you've either spoken to a potential customer on the phone or face to face. I know I advertise it, with those skills. So I want evidence that you could communicate with another human being. Second of all, I want some evidence that you are going to be resilient enough. So when somebody says no, 95% of the time, you're not going to get up from your desk and walk away thinking this is terrible. I didn't sign up for this. You want to be able to just understand that it's not a no about you. It's maybe a no about the timing or some other reason. So that type of resilience is really, really important. And it's the one that scares everybody off getting into sales, customers saying no. We want you to be resilient around the no's you're going to get
Mm.
constantly. And I think probably the third part, and this is a little bit more difficult, particularly when you're recruiting somebody to really see, and that is some level of emotional intelligence where you understand how to connect with people and understand their behavior. And I've often said that to be successful in sales, you need less to be a product expert and more to be a people expert. So I'm looking for a level of expertise in how humans behave, and that's a little bit more difficult
Yeah.
to find because that is where success in sales is.
Yeah. That sort of understanding people is
Mm,
so often, I think, overlooked, and it's
I think
something
it
I'd
is.
always recommend. Like, I've never really done it, but like studying psychology or something like that, that would be
I
such
love
an
psychology.
addition.
I'm
Okay,
I'm an armchair expert in psychology.
yeah. Any a little bit off topic, but
Yeah.
any reading or like any examples of
Uh,
anyone if they did want to get into that kind of stuff?
oh, look, I can't recommend anything specifically, but I've devoured every
Yeah.
article on LinkedIn that I found. Anything on the internet, you can look at. I've just every time um, I see something, I just want to read it about anything about human behavior.
Mm. That piece about resilience, by the way, that
Mm,
that sort of thing about people sticking around. That and if we talk about the SDR role, entry level salespeople,
mm,
people coming into the profession, I don't know the exact stats, but the rate of people who don't quite make the cut is often
yeah.
quite high. From your experience and an opinion, why is it that people sort of don't make the cut, or and what is it about the
Yeah,
people that do tend to stick around that keeps them coming back?
I think that's a great question, and what I've noticed is those people who don't stick around don't quite understand how difficult the role is. They don't quite get that you're going to get so many no's before you get a yes that you need to figure out how psychologically you're going to absorb that, process it, and then put it aside so
Yeah,
you can keep going. I don't believe in, many companies still haven't figured out a way to explain it to a candidate that they see without scaring them off. Everybody wants you to come on
yeah,
board so you can give it a go. Maybe you'll kick a few goals, but if I'm upfront with you about what you're expecting, I might just scare you off. And I think
mm,
that's unfortunately we're doing each other a disservice. We're hiring somebody who doesn't quite get what the role's about, and somebody's not asking the right questions and taking on a role without quite understanding. So I think that's one of the reasons that we see a turnover. Those who stay in the sector and move through the SDR, then perhaps either a BDR or a junior account exec, and then move on, or account manager and move on. I think they've figured out, first of all, how to cope with that no, how to process it properly, how to psychologically process it and put it aside. And two, they figured out that it's not product expertise that makes them successful, it's people expertise. And taking those two things, I think they can move forward quite well.
I think it's around what that first point you mentioned about understanding that you're not going to necessarily get the quick wins that that might have initially attracted you to the profession, and how to sort of for companies to articulate that. I think it's around just understanding that delayed gratification, isn't it? Someone who can understand that you're gonna put in work for months and nothing's gonna happen.
That's right.
Like, you're not gonna see any results. Like, and it's like, how can you say that to someone without them going, "Oh no, thank you"?
That's a great point.
What I've tried to, and it's something I tried to look in when I hire for my team. Can I find someone who understands that delayed gratification? It might be someone who, maybe works out in the gym, because it's the same thing. You might slog away for weeks, months on end at the gym and might not see any results, but you down the track, it compounds and builds, and that's what I sort of try and look for. And I think if I don't know, if we, as you say, if we can somehow find a way to articulate it without completely scaring them off, hiring sales would become a lot easier.
Maybe the patience part is a really, really important one. The fact that people come in and they expect success immediately I think is a problem. And I always like the metaphor about the gym, because I think a lot of people get that. It's not about working harder in that moment. It's about consistency and consistently doing it to see a payoff over a period of time, rather than immediate gratification.
Yeah, that's what I always say. Like, someone has a great day, they have bang out a load of calls, they speak to a load of customers, and maybe nothing happens. And they're like, "Why didn't anything happen? Why haven't I closed any deals or whatever?" And I would just say, well, imagine you went to the gym one time, had a great workout, woke up the next day, you're highly likely to be look exactly the same.
Exactly.
You've just got to put that workout in day after day after day after day, and then you'll see the results.
You've got to understand that at least you've moved forward. That's the win. You've moved forward. You've moved closer to your goal. And if you do that every day, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, just pushing that needle, even if you're just nudging it a little bit forward day by day. That's what it is.
Exactly.
Mate, as we sort of wrap this up, I want to ask a couple more questions.
Sure.
These are quite. I don't want to hit you with some big some
Go ahead.
some big questions here. But,
Go ahead.
This is maybe a sort of one to, looking at your career, reflecting back a little bit. Is there one sort of biggest lesson that you've learned over the years from all your experience, maybe from someone or some experience that kind of, stays true to you to this day, that you hold on to, that you always come back to, maybe you reinforce to your team, that you could, share with me and my audience?
I've learned a lot of lessons, a lot. If I were, though, I mean, there's obviously some obvious ones that I don't want to, repeat. I'm sure you've heard it from many, many other people. One thing that I would like to mention that I think is kind of an epidemic in the sales profession, and that is spending your time going after someone who will never become a customer is at crazy proportions right now in the industry, where people are spending hours and hours and hours chasing somebody who eventually says no. And there's got to be a better way to be able to either qualify somebody out as quickly as possible, or qualify them in as quickly as possible. But what I found, the number one mistake that salespeople make, thinking they've got plenty of time, and salespeople do not have plenty of time. There's always a deadline they've got to meet, and every hour that you spend with a customer who will never buy is an hour you're not spending with a customer who will. So that's the lesson that I've always remembered, and have always tried to impart to anybody that I work with or manage.
Yeah, just you can kind of trick yourself into thinking you're being busy just by speaking to people and booking meetings and stuff. Yeah, I'm doing stuff. And hang on, is this person ever going to buy from us? Definitely, mate. Definitely guilty of that one for sure. One final one, mate. Sure. This is a fairly broad question, but it's maybe a bit personal. This is more to do, why you do what you do. Around the idea of success, typically my closing question on this show. To yourself, Michael, what does sort of success mean in your life?
That definition of success for me has changed over many years. When I first started, I just wanted to make a lot of money. And then it was the reason I want to make a lot of money. The reason I want to do it is because I want to buy nicer clothes or drive a nicer car. That has changed a lot over the years. And my definition of success with my level of experience is this. The fact that I have control over my own destiny is, to me, a success. Rather than having somebody else that sometimes I've never would have met make decisions about my future and my career path and my destiny and my life, I want to be in total control of that. And if I am, to me, that is success.
Brilliant. Michael, thank you very much for joining me on the show today. Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that last answer. I'm definitely, personally, I got a lot from that conversation. I'm going to be, listening back, probably making a couple of notes. But I think anyone who works in business, sales, leadership will maybe take a couple of things from you there. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you coming on and taking.
Thank you very much, Joe.